Now, once the molecular weight has been calculated, as we've already seen and tested, the next thing to do is to store the user's sum, basically the molecular weight that has been calculated and the chemical compound that they've entered in a text file so that they can have the option to download that as a PDF or as a docs file. And that will all be accounted for so that when the administrator logs in, they can find out how many people have downloaded a PDF or docs file documentations or type of documents to know which one's the most popular type of document format. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable. And what I would like to do is I would like to print this in a different color again. So I'm going to copy this color code right here and I'm going to paste it over here. So the color code I'm going to go with, or the color I'm going to use for this one, is probably 226. So I'm going to try 226. So I'm going to take this out and write 226. The next thing I'm going to do is ask for the name. So I'm going to create a variable called name, make it of a string type, and then input, of course, and then ask them to enter their name. Now, once this is done, the next thing to do is to create the file. But before we create the file, we kind of have to create to assign a variable where we create the file name. So depending on what the person enters as the name, that will be the name that will be used to generate the file. So I'm going to create a variable called file name. And what I will do is I'll assign the name of the person, whatever they enter as their name, plus the extension of the file that we're creating, which is a text file. So this is what we call file management in programming. Basically creation of file and writing to file. The next thing I'll do is open up this file. So I'm going to use this file equal open. This is how you create a text file in Python programming language. You have to write the name of your file that you want to open or create, which is this file name here that we did. This is the reason why I put the extension so it can indicate it's a text file. And then you have to pass the command of what you want to do in this file. So I'm going to pass the command of write. Now there are two different commands that we studied in this tutorial. There's one that's called the A, and then there's this one called the W. So the A is the append, which means that anytime a file is, or the user creates a file, or whatever file it is, it's always going to append information. I would say, actually, let's go with append, because if we say write, what write does is that you cannot add more than one line of information in the file with write, with the W command. It basically overwrites what was already in the file, and you don't want that to happen because here we want to put basically the chemical compound, and we want to put the calculated molecular weight for that compound. So you don't want to be putting write, because if you do put write, then you can't put the chemical compound and the molecular weight. You can only put one of those. But if you do say append A, then you can add more than one type of data into the file, or more than one data. So it's a good idea to put A, which means append. The next thing to do is to write file.write, and then we're basically going to indicate what we want to write in here. And what I want to do is I want to write the name of the person first. So I'm going to say name plus. Here you got to use the plus, not the comma, because you're dealing with file. And don't forget to always put /n, because that means that you want to go to the next line in the file. You don't want to put everything all on one line. The next thing I want to do is I want to also write some nice ASCII art design in the file. So you can do this. This is optional. If you want to make it look nice, you can put some ASCII art and also write that down. But also don't forget that you also have to put that /n so that it goes on to the next line to write the next thing. Now what we're going to write as well is basically write the chemical compound that they have entered. And so we can do chemical compound, right? And then of course we're going to do I'm going to put like a colon in space so that there's a space, and then I'll close the quotation mark and the plus sign. Plus basically means something called concatenation. And what concatenation does in programming is basically joining things together, strings together. In this case, we're joining the compounds together. So we're going to, like the compound, because it's a string, they entered it as a string. And also because it's being written as a compound, like in the form that we have it as a subscript with subscript values. So it's written as a proper compound. It doesn't just look very odd, like, you know, H2O. It's actually H subscript 2 and then O, for example. So after we do this, The next thing we want to do, I'm going to put that same ASCII art. So I just use the AI to help me with this. But of course, you can copy this line and just paste it down here as well. So I'm putting some ASCII art as well. And then we're going to do the mass of the compound, or you can say the molecular weight. We're going to write that to the file as well. So file.write, and you have to convert this molecular weight from an int to a string. Remember, because a text file does not store integer values, it stores string values. So you can't really just write it as an int, which is this one here, the sum, that is the molecular weight. You have to convert that into a string. So I'm going to write molecular weight of compound, okay, because that's what they entered, obviously. And then I'm going to put a plus sign and then call this molecular weight, and that's going to be string. I'm going to convert this from an integer to a string. And then, of course, I'm just going to put that in the text file. So I'm just going to put /n, again, next line. So after this, I'm going to also print a nice ASCII art as well. So you can copy paste it, or you can use the AI on MarsCode to help you with this. And that's pretty much what we want to write in the file. So I'm going to close the file right now. And then we're going to just say, we're going to tell them that the data has been stored. So I'm just going to print a message. And I'm going to print a message in another color code. So I'm going to copy this color code, in another color. I'm going to copy this color code and paste it over here. And probably go for, this time, maybe go for like 63 as the color. So this one right here. So I'm going to just put that instead of 208, I'm going to write 63. Right, that's my color. And then I'm just going to print and tell them that your data has been stored. So your data has been stored, or you can say your results has been stored, anything you want. And I actually want to do something just before even I put this text. I want to print some sort of different style of ASCII art, sort of like that. And then it will display and actually move this color. We can cut it out and just take it a line before. I want to apply the color to this new ASCII art and this information. So I'm just printing the message saying your data has been stored. I put my ASCII art in here. And then after about maybe a second, I'll do a time.sleep for about 1 second wait. I'm going to tell them thank you for using this program, and probably ask them if they would like to print. Now, this is the part where we get to ask them, would you like to download your results or download your data in a PDF document, or as a PDF document, or as a docs document, so that they can keep it for the record, for example. So what's going to happen is I'm going to, first of all, tell them thank you for using this program. So I'm going to print that message here and say, thank you for using our program. So here I'm just going to do it. Thank you for using the program, right? And then I'm going to come down and print a nice ASCII art over here, as you can see. And so I like to put this ASCII art because it just displays it in a nice way. And then afterwards is now where we get to ask them if they would like to download this as a PDF or as a docs file. And that's where we have to make the calculation happen, because the calculation is the one that's going to be, what I mean by calculation is mean the count. Because remember, we're going to count and see how many people have downloaded the results as a PDF as opposed to a docs. And that's just going to be a statistics for the administrator. So once the administrator logs in, that's the kind of stats that they would have available to them. So you're going to learn how you can be able to authenticate login details, which is allowing the administrator to log in, but at the same time learn how you can be able to get data from a file and use that data to create statistics or graph or whatever need be. So after this, I'm going to ask them that question. And I would do a time.sleep again, just to create that realistic pause. And then, of course, I'm going to print in another color. And I think I'm going to go with white color this time. So I'm going to go with 15, because that's the white color right here. So I'm going to change this number and write 15 over here. And then afterwards, I'm going to create this variable called download. And in this variable, I'm going to ask the question of, would you like to download it in a PDF or in a docs format? So I'm going to do an input and ask the question, open parentheses. So would you like to download, okay, your results? And then I'm going to say in a, and then give them those examples of what they could do. So I'm going to do a /n, which means going to the next line. The first example I'm going to write is PDF format. Then I'm going to do a /n. The second example is as a docs file. Okay, so I'm going to write that there. So docs format, or you can just say docs format, really. And that's pretty much it. So that's like, well, and I'll do a /n so they can put their answer on the next line. So that's what we're asking them. And I'm going to print another ASCII art over here. So this ASCII art is going to come kind of long enough to, maybe not too long, just to cover the question in general. And then afterwards, this is where we now give the options, like check what they're giving as an option. So again, I'm going to do a validation. I'm going to say while download. Remember, we always have to do validation because you're always trying to make sure that the user is entering correct data. So the AI can really help you here, which is pretty much what I used, because we already know the while loop is a very good way to validate. And we said while download, that means if they enter an option that's not 1 or 2, then it will tell them incorrect entry and allow them to enter their option again, which should be 1 or 2. And I'm going to shift this actually inside here. Now, if they do enter the correct option, right? That's while not in. What about while yes? So we're going to say if they do enter either 1, they want to download their file as a PDF or as a PDF file, for example, then we're going to be able to do that for them. So we're going to be able to provide them with that option of how they can do it. And this is where we use the Aspose library to do so. Okay, we're going to use the Aspose library to do so. And what we're going to do for this is we're going to create this variable called doc, and we're going to assign it to the document. And in here, we're going to put what is the document. Remember what the Aspose.words library does is that it converts a text file into either a PDF or a docs format. So we have to put the name of the text file, and the name of our text file is called file name. If you guys remembered from here, right? We have the file name text file. So we're going to write it in here and say file name because that's what we're trying to download as a PDF. So we have to indicate that. And we have to create a new variable called file name. I'm going to call it file name 2. And this variable is going to generate the new PDF file name. So it's going to be the file name, or you can just say not file name, the name of the person, dot the extension, which is .pdf. This basically just generates the new PDF that has been converted from this text file into PDF. And then the next thing we're going to do is say doc, which is the variable that we created, dot save. So that's kind of like the keyword you have to use here. And then in this case, you're calling it file name 2. So this is kind of how you got to get it to download as a PDF. And that's pretty much it for PDF. So that's if they want to download this as a PDF format. Now we're going to do elif. What about if they decide to download this as a docs format? So we go on to the next line. Now for docs format, what we will do is we will again basically create a variable. I'm going to call it sort of the same thing that we just did now. So because it's a docs, it's a little bit different. So I'm going to just call it file name like this. And then in here, I'm going to put in the text file. You have to put in the text file that you want to basically download or convert as a docs, which is called file_name. And then here I'm going to create a variable called output, which is basically the new docs file that we want to download. I'll put AW. Remember that is for the Aspose.words. AW means Aspose.words because we've imported that library. And then finally, we have to remove all the contents of the destination file. So we kind of have to like take all the contents out from the document, the docs document, before actually appending information from the text file into the docs document. So how we're going to do this is we're going to use this variable output that we created, dot remove underscore all children. That's what you're going to write, and then circular brackets. So this is more specific to docs. It's a little bit different from PDF. PDF, you could see, is pretty straightforward and easy. So now we're going to say for, you got to create a variable. So I'm just going to say for fin, and we're going to say that list that we created called file name at the top here, because that's the one that contains, we're basically going through all the information in that text file so we can convert it into this docs format and, you know, get it downloaded. So we're going to do it this way. I'm going to create a variable called input, and then I'll do that AW document. And then here we have to specify this variable. So what we're doing is, again, getting all the information from this text file. Remember, the text file was called file name. If you look at the top, that was the name that we used to create this text file for whenever the user has finished performing their operation. And then we're using a for loop to go through that text file, to go through every single thing in the file, and then inputting it so we can output it as a docs file. So now we're going to say output.append underscore, don't forget to put this as an append underscore document, and in parentheses, we're going to specify what we want to output as a document, which is the input. And then here we have to use this keyword called aw.importFormatMode. Okay, you can pretty much just use the AI for this. It can also give you the suggestion. And it's not use destination styles, but it will be more of importFormatMode.keep. Okay, if you type it in, it just pretty much comes out. Keep source formatting. Okay, that means you're just going to keep the way you have written all the information in the text file would still stay that same way to be downloaded as a doc file. So that's pretty much how you get that done. And then now we have to come back down here, and we have to create a new file. So a new file that would be a new file name that would be this new file that has been downloaded as a docs file, sort of like what we did here for the PDF document. So you can actually use this file name again. You can still use it because these are two different things. So you can say file name 3. I'm actually going to call it file name 3. And this is just going to be the name.docs because it's a document. And then finally, you're going to say output.save. So you have to save your file. So output was that variable that you used in the beginning. So now you're going to say output.save. And what are you saving as? File name 3, file underscore name 3. So this is how it gets downloaded as a docs file. And that's pretty much it for it. So that's all you have to do for the PDF and docs file to get them downloaded in that format. Now, one important thing that we need to do is we need to keep track of all this information, right? And so because if we don't keep track of how many people are downloading the PDF and how many people are downloading the docs, then we can't really create any statistics for the administrator so they can be able to see it in a graphical form of how many people downloaded the PDF as opposed to the docs and vice versa. So what we will do is we have to go and create a count variable that we can use whenever they choose to download as a PDF. The count is going to go count +1. So it's going to do always +1, +1, +1. Anytime they decide to choose to download as a PDF, and anytime they decide to choose to download as a docs. So we have to get that count. It's very important so we can basically just create that stats. And we have to save that count into a PDF document. Why are we doing that? Because if we don't save it into a PDF document, it's going to be very hard for us to kind of read the data and then convert it into a graph so that the administrator can be able to see such things. So we have to basically save it into a PDF file. So what are we going to do? So let's go back up and create the variable that's going to be the count to monitor how many people are downloading as a PDF and how many people are downloading as a doc. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to create it called PDF count like this. I'm going to set it to 0 in the beginning because it's going to act as a counter. And I'm going to create one called docs count and set it equal to 0. So basically declare and initialize it. And now once I've done that, you have to global, whenever you declare variables outside of your function, you have to make sure that you global them if you want to use them. So remember that this whole thing that we've done, this entire program, is inside of a function, right? So we have to global those variables if we want to use it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to global them. So I'll go back here and I'll do global the PDF count and global the docs count, right? And we're going to test this out just to see how it works before we even do the part of like the whole stats and everything else. So what we're going to do after this, now that we've globaled these two variables, we can now go back and use them. So I'm going to go back down to any time they decide to download as a PDF right here. The first thing I'll do before anything is I'll basically do that PDF count is equals to PDF count plus 1. All right, so like that. And then you can even do plus equal 1. That's a shorthand of how you can write it. And here I'm going to do docs count plus equal 1. This is a shorthand. It's the same thing as docs count equals docs count plus 1. This is a shorter hand of how you can write it. But then something very important that I would do is I would always write this to the document. We have to create a PDF file where we can store this information. Anytime a count is done, it will always add up to the like you would write it into the document. So one thing to do is whenever a count is whenever someone downloads as a PDF or a docs, as I've already said, you want to be able to write that information into your document. And that's very important. And also, this means that whenever someone comes, and we have to make modifications as well, because if we keep it this way, then it means that anytime somebody comes, it's always going to count as 1. It's always going to count as 1. It's always going to count as 1. It's not going to update the numbers. So what we want to do is we want to update the numbers, right? We want to be able to get all the information from the file and get the numbers updated. So what I'm saying is we're going to write that information in the file, whatever the information is of how many people have downloaded the PDF or docs. And then whenever someone comes back and downloads as a PDF or doc, we have to make sure that we read from the file the information, and we're going to add it here. It's very important. So what I'm trying to say is this. For this to actually work properly, the count, so it can actually count well and not just every time a person comes and downloads, it's always going to be just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. That's going to be written in the file. Let's create 2 files that we will use to store this information of how many people have downloaded as a PDF and how many have downloaded as a docs for statistics. So I'm going to go over here and create a file. I'm going to call one PDF count. Okay, it's going to be a text file. This is how you create it. You have to click new file, type the name and put .txt and hit enter. I'm going to create another one, and that's going to be for, you're noticing that the file is being created here. It's going to open for you. I'm going to create another one for the docs count, and that's going to be .txt. Now, what I'm trying to say is now that we have the 2 files, we have docs count and we have text PDF count. It's really important that you read the data from this file that already exists so you can be able to add that information to here so you can get the right count. And then you always add it back into the, back into the file. So the first thing you do is to read what you have in the file. That means read what you have in the PDF count file, like what number is there, and then just add it as +1, that number +1. Right? Because then that's how you maintain the count. And at the end of the day, you get to add that new updated value back into the PDF, or you get to write it. That's what I meant. So imagine we have in the PDF count, we have the number initially at 0, right? At 0. So the number is initially 0. Same thing for the docs counts. The number initially is 0. Now, whenever we go back to our program, we're going to read that information. So we're going to create a variable called file1 right here at the top, and we're going to say open. And what are we opening? We're basically just opening the file. So we're going to open, in this case, since it's PDF, we're going to open PDF _ we already know the name, count.txt. Oh, and make sure to put this in quotation marks because you're reading the file. And now you're going to pass a command, and this command is going to be passed as read because you're reading the file. Now what you're going to do is you're going to create a variable that's going to be called read file, and this variable is going to be equal to the file1.readLine. You can do read line or you can do read. If you say read line, you're basically reading the first part of the file.